Got Your Eers On is brought to you by Tactical Legion 9.
All right, everybody, hello and welcome to this week's episode of Got Your Eers On. Guido here along with Scoot, Sprung, and Johnson.
Guido, last time we talked, we thought we needed two things to happen to be happy in March. And daggone, Scoot, if two of those things didn't happen.
I mean, we said in the last show this was either going to be a really happy podcast or a really depressing podcast.
That's right. You did say that.
Scooty, I think it's favoring in the happy side of the podcast world. I mean, I felt those were like two good wins this week.
I agree. I'm a little surprised. I don't know that I expected two wins. Maybe, and what's odd to say, and I guess it's in my mind, I think I would have thought that the Iowa State game, I think in my mind, I think that would have been the easier of the two games to win, which is odd saying that because they were unranked, yet Kansas State was ranked. But in my mind, I guess I have very little respect for Kansas State.
I have little respect for your mind right now. That made no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, that didn't make any sense.
I know, it doesn't make any sense.
I mean, in general,
I'm saying it doesn't make sense.
I think that it was, I will say that watching the Iowa State game, they look good. I mean, did you ever feel like super in doubt? Like, it was a tight game, but they were on. I felt like the team was on, right? Conversely, I feel like with the K-State game, we started off so bad. The first half was not. I mean, the first half of the first half was so bad that I was at one point in the game. I think with about 10 minutes into the game, 8 minutes into the game, we were shooting under 30%. And they were shooting 65% in that K-State game. And we were on the text machine texting each other, Johnson, and I was like, well, this is not going to end well. But they turned it around, and they played that game. I feel like you saw two games where Emmett became Emmett.
Yeah, and I think someone tweeted it out. I think it was the Smoking Musket account, but someone made the comment on Twitter that this was the first time in a long time. And Scoot, I wanted to see what you thought. It sounded like something that you would have scripted up for someone to tweet. But Smoking Musket tweeted out that this felt like the first time in a long time you felt like you were all in on this team. It felt like a Bob Huggins team. They were fighting. Like at one point in this game, Guido, I think when we were texting, I was thinking, even if they lose, I'm so proud of these guys right now. They were just fighting their butts off. I mean, ironically, the best thing that could have happened, it was almost like Trey Mitchell said, I'm not on the scoreboard. I'm not helping the box score too much. I might as well jam an elbow in this perm guy's face and just light this team on fire for the final, 8 minutes of this game. I thought they fought so hard, and we poke fun at Hilton Magic because, like Scoot, I think that's kind of ridiculous. But nonetheless, you're on the road in arguably the best version of one of the best basketball conferences we've seen in a long, long time. Packed house, their senior night, and it was sort of one of those things, Guido. Like, and this is I'll only get on the soapbox for a second, but. You know how you see like Cincinnati and Central Florida, they've put tweets out recently sewing the Big 12 logo on their little jerseys and stuff, and they're so happy. And I just look at them like there's a popular thing around me. People will say, bless their heart. And that's what I feel like. They have no idea what they're getting into. When you go on the road in basketball in this conference, you better lace it up a little bit tighter.
I mean,
and if you're WVU, and I think Cincinnati and Central Florida are going to find this out too, like Scoot, when Oklahoma State goes on the road, when Kansas State goes on the road, okay, you're on the road. When West Virginia goes on the road across multiple time zones, and you're in the gym in an atmosphere like that the other night at Iowa State, And it's just your roster of guys, your coaches, maybe a few family members that made the trip in your little like 2 rows of seats, and then the entire arena around you. Like, you better be ready to play or you're going to get eaten up. And I was so proud of them the other night in Ames. It was just such a fight. And to win a game like that, I thought that's a game that, like, if you were ever going to propel yourself into March, boy, was that ever a game to help you do it.
So what you're saying is Central Florida doesn't know about that magic.
No.
And
No.
And they also don't know about the historic Gallagher-Iba Arena.
Right. They don't know about the laser tag center.
That's right. Or the Bramblage
Coliseum.
But
Yes.
but let's talk about the conference here for a second, because I wanted to bring this up to both of you guys. And we, as WVU fans, are lucky enough to have played basketball in 2 of maybe the best basketball conferences seasons of all time, right? And so, like, this season, I mean, and I've read multiple things. I've heard they were talking about it during the K-State game on the ESPN broadcast. Like, this season is probably the best basketball conference, like overall performance by a conference, since what? Late 90s, 99 Big East Conference. Like, you're talking about you know, I think there's an argument that all 10 teams should be in the in March Madness.
Well,
I know that's not going to happen, and I understand that there's some flubs there, and I get that, but like, you take the bottom of our conference and you pit it against the some of these teams that are going to get in, and I understand that you get these automatic qualifiers and all of that, but like, think about it. Like, when was the last time you saw a conference be this dominant and have this many people in top? I mean, West Virginia, WVU, with all the losses and all the moaning and groaning that we have done this year on this podcast for this basketball season, they still, right now in the AP, are like 32. They got a vote for the top 25 this week. Like, I think that's what's crazy about this conference.
Yeah, and I think when you consider, just to take a second on that, I mean, when you consider Oklahoma in the SEC Big 12 Challenge houses the number one, what wasn't Alabama number 1 at that time? They beat them by like 30. I mean, I know that's one data point, but I think every team in the conference is so resilient and hard-nosed. They're coached pretty well. I think top to bottom, they'd be a tough out for anyone. And I think that's what, and I know we're going to get to Kansas State, but, Guido, I think for as much as we have even last week said, we continue to feel like the talent is there on this team, but the coaching hasn't really caught up and been A+ all season. It's hard now. I don't know. Help me summarize that, because I think when we were 0-5 in conference, I have a feeling if we went back to those shows, we were looking at the rest of the conference schedule going, where are wins going to come? What are we going to get? 2 or 3 wins? We were kind of like, this team feels so out of sorts right now. And they proceed to finish 7-6 in conference. I mean, that's something,
right?
In this conference. Yeah. I mean, you just described how you feel about this conference, and they get their poop in a group after 0-5, and they go 7-6 the rest of the way. I mean, I think we need to stop and make sure, we acknowledge that. That's huge. I don't think anyone expected that in January when it felt like the wheels were falling off. So kudos to them.
And I will say, like, Scoot may have been a little overzealous with his 12 conference wins.
It was very close, though.
I don't know if I'd say that. I don't know if I'd say that. You're not. I mean, I think that we should go back in the time machine and listen to who said how many wins there were going to be, because I think there was somebody on this podcast that was saying it was going to be like 6, 7, 8 wins. Who could that? I don't know who that was.
Probably Johnson.
Who that was?
I think I said 9-9, so it had to be you, Mr.
It
Guido.
was me, right? And I said that we were going to end up with a 10 or 11 seed in the tournament, and we were going to go Sweet 16. I'm going to, like, you guys are going to be bowing at the feet of the prophet when that happens in a couple of weeks here.
I mean, don't pat yourself on the back or anything.
I mean, I'm just saying.
No Striguido here, Scoot. But I think if you consider, especially, we're one possession at Fall Gallon Fieldhouse from maybe winning 4 in a row here down the stretch.
Right.
I don't know. I just think it's crazy. It's so unpredictable. Like I'm glad that we have stuck with this team. We believed in the talent. We were hoping, that it would all gel and come together. And it feels like I don't know how to talk about this Kansas State game, I guess. Now, I don't know how you could have packaged Guido March 4th, 3:04 day. I mean, if that's not an omen for senior day in the Coliseum, a packed house, another sellout.
I didn't realize that.
For the 600th win in the Coliseum's history. I mean, it's hard to if you were going to write if you were going to write a script, you would put a lot of these elements in there. I just thought it was a great day and a great finish to the regular season. I think you now have, you've got some momentum that I didn't think we could get a hold of in this basketball season.
And Scooty, what was your opinion on the K-State game where I think we've been asking for it all season during conference play. Emmett was the one who ended up putting the team on his back down the stretch. And it's what we've been looking for.
Well, I think if you were to look at his games played, for whatever reason, I don't know what happened, but I'm going to say sometime between 6 and 8 games ago, Emmett started to be a little bit more aggressive. I think you saw a little bit more consistency in the scoring column out of him, which, if I'm being honest, which I like to do here on this show.
You're very honest.
Much needed, because Trey Mitchell decided he was going to become a ghost the last 6 or 7 games of the season. I don't want to say he's unreliable, but if you're counting on him to score 15 to 20 a game, I don't know if that's going to happen every game.
But in his defense, Scooty, I will say, I think Trey Mitchell, I don't know if this is what I felt watching these last 2 games. I feel like Trey Mitchell has decided that he goes I can't score. I've forgotten how to score. So like Johnson said, he spent the last 2 games just throwing elbows, being rough, being where the ball was. And he's the one. And here's the thing that I think happened in the last 2 games that helped us be successful is he took the fouls away from Eric Stevenson in these last 2 games. He came in and I feel like, especially in the K-State game, in that last the second half, he took those fouls that where Eric's usually chasing the ball and getting a stupid foul that we get angry about. That was Trey Mitchell taking that foul. So maybe he found his spot when shooting wasn't going right.
I'm going to say this. Johnson is maybe Trey Mitchell's number 1 fan.
How so?
Maybe, and I can just tell, Johnson loves the type of player that Trey Mitchell is at times, or can be, the potential Trey Mitchell.
Yes.
That 6'8", 6'9" wing player, can post up in the paint, can take a guy outside and hit an outside shot, could drive to the lane, has a nice little baby hook shot.
Wears 2 different shoes.
He loves that. He loves that about him. If he wore white shocks, that would be even better.
That would be pretty good.
That is Johnson, for what our listeners don't realize, was Issa Ahmad's number 1 fan. So this kind of player is carrying over, and he sees a little bit of Issa in Trey, and he loves that.
Well, we didn't talk about it a whole lot. I am a Trey fan. You needle me with Issa any chance you get. But back on where you started with Emmett, I think you can't underscore that Iowa State game enough as kind of the Emmett Matthews game, right? I mean, he finishes out the last 2 minutes of that game, just like Guido said, putting the team on his back. I think in this game with Kansas State, it felt like he had an aggressive Emmett dunk that we haven't seen in a hot second. He did go for 20. In fact, all 3 fifth-year seniors went for 20 plus. Kedrian went for 23 and Stevenson 27. But I think if there was ever a time you were like, please step up, like we've been begging you to be the guy we know you can be, please be that guy. Man, did he showed up. I mean, again, kudos to him. I thought when we needed it, he showed the type of leadership you would expect a 5th-year senior, to say, hey, look, this is why I came back. I can do this. That's exactly what he did.
I mean, Scooty, he plays 75 minutes of 80 possible minutes in those last 2 games. He played all 40 minutes in the K-State game, and he plays 30, only sits on the bench for 5 minutes. So, I mean, it's the Emmett Matthews that we need down the stretch, and I think maybe he saw like some of these guys not being prepared and having, like you had said on the last show, talking about Jimmy Bell, just not being used to the grind of a D1 season. Emmett really took the reins.
You guys are the stats guys here. Tell me the minutes played by the bench. Rattle off some of that stuff. Do you have it in front of you?
This was another one that you and I liked. This was another game that you and I call for all the time. So off the bench, you had Okonkwo and Sumnick totaled 19 together because they were sort of split with, I think, Jimmy Bell. I think Big Tonka plays 12. So you get like a full 5 there. You know what I mean? Like that's the way I kind of look at that. Otherwise, Kobe 8 minutes, Toots 10, Seth Wilson gets in for a minute. That's it.
Which is interesting. Seth Wilson only gets a minute in the K-State game, which I thought was
Matthews, so Scoot, Emmett plays full 40, Trey 39, Kedrian 36, Stevenson 35 minutes.
Now,
that was that core was on the floor the whole game.
Is it?
Right.
It's probably skewed a little bit, right? Because it's senior day. Because this is the last time they're going to be on the home court.
Right.
And coaches do that. Like I'm telling you, coaches, I as a high school coach, I've been through it. You feel like you've got to, at the very least, get them as much opportunity to play on that floor, especially if you're in a winning situation. And they were. So that's probably skewed a little bit. But again, we win the game playing roughly 8 guys.
right
With time. I've said this, and Johnson and I've kind of beat this drum. If you look at every successful major program, they're not trotting out 11 or 12 guys for double-digit minutes. You just can't get any consistency that way.
So, Johnson, after these 2 games, we get what I like to refer to as happy huggins. We get a
Isn't
joyful.
it funny though? You're right. Like post-win, post-game hugs is happy hugs. It's much easier to listen to, isn't it?
It's much easier to listen to. He's talking about after the Iowa State win, what a great effort the team has done.
Right.
They did a great. He's praising play. I mean, and I get it's senior night, but he's talking about how glad he was that Emmett came back after the K-State game. Happy hugs going into the postseason, though. Is that what we want? Do we want a happy hug, Scooty, in the postseason?
Well, it's been a while since we've been in the postseason, so I'll take any kind of hugs we get in a postseason. So happy or sad, we'll take a hugs in a postseason.
Didn't you think though? What? So
because it's been what? How long has it been? 3 years? 4?
Yeah, it might be since 2019. I don't remember 2021 going. Yeah, we did. We lost in the first round. I forgot we lost in the second round to Syracuse that year. That was the 2021 we played. First round we beat I don't remember who we beat. But we lost in the second round to Syracuse. We beat Morehead State.
Remember because
that was the year we were 3. We were ranked 3rd.
That's
we
right.
had a
that
really
was
high
Oscar
ranking.
and Deuce.
Yes, that was that Oscar and
we
Deuce
were
year.
angry about being zoned. Remember, we were frustrated by the zone. Well, what I was going to say that the thing that struck me though, since we're kind of focused on Emmett here for a minute, is how he seemed to really, I mean, honestly, soak in the entire senior day experience. And he had a quote from way back that he said when he hit the portal to come back to Morgantown, he had said, I wonder what it would feel like to walk senior day in the Coliseum. I thought you could tell Saturday against K-State, he really soaked in the entire, I mean, it was a great atmosphere anyway, but for him, he really kind of stopped to smell the roses, as it were, Scoot. It looked like he really took it all in.
It would have been funny if he had said Geno Smith's quote.
Oh,
they wrote me off, but I ain't right back yet.
I ain't right back yet. You know, Geno said that his mom got mad at him because he was an English major, and so he said his mom has yelled at him ever since he said that, because she was like, you should have taken the time to use proper like that's not proper English. You're an English major.
Agree.
I thought that was funny.
You're not dumb. You ain't dumb.
He was explaining
Say
that.
right.
But yeah, I just thought that was the cool, because I get Guido talking about happy hugs. I get Scoot, I get a little verklempt when you see Hugs give the senior day hug, like the real, like, I love you, man hug that Hugs gives. Like, he gave those guys those like, I'm glad you fought with me. I'm glad you were in the trenches with me. I love that stuff. I think it's funny how, for as gruff as he is, Hugs sort of in those moments reminds you, like, he really does care about these guys, and they love that dude. They love playing for him. I love that stuff. That was a great atmosphere.
I love Huggins gets his 934th win as a head coach, Hall of Fame coach. We know we're already there. He did, though, after the K-State game, kind of channel his inner Scooty a little bit. He says to TC in the post-game interview on the radio, he says, I could care less what Joe Lunardi thinks.
Right,
I could, where everybody was like, "Oh, well, Joe Lunardi now says you're in because you won this game." He's like, "I could care less what Joe Lunardi thinks."
Joe Lunardi wears a lot of mock turtlenecks at the wrong times of year.
Like, it's getting warmer now. You don't need that mock turtleneck, right?
Why does he wear so many mock turtlenecks?
But with that said, in Joe Lunardi's bracketology, he has WVU as a 10th seed right now. We're no longer a bubble team. We are in, according to him. Let's
be honest. What did Lunardi do to get this prominent role as like the grand poobah of brackets?
I mean,
like, did he have like an Excel spreadsheet or something? He's like, hey, listen, look, check this out, guys.
Did you say Exprel? Like Exprel Spreewell's version of Excel?
I think so. I think I did say that. But
I feel like, Scoot, he was you, where he just said, what I say is very important and people should listen, and people listen.
Or
and
maybe,
I'll be honest.
Or maybe, Scoot, they were like, this guy looks like a CPA. Like, we should probably listen to what he's talking about.
Does the average American really understand what he's saying when he says they're the first four in, the first four out, the first four to the left, there's the first four upside down, then there's the first four around the corner?
Well, it is like overcomplicating things, isn't it? It's like,
the first four around the corner. Oh, okay. What's that mean?
Listen, we got to fill some time in this segment. Can you just make this as like hard to explain as humanly possible? And he's like, got it. I got it.
To keep roughly 1 million people interested by naming 16 colleges that aren't possibly going to get in this tournament, but could possibly get in this tournament, so that we at least get everyone's attention.
Well, I mean, the NCAA helps because now there are 320 teams that get into the tournament now. Like,
but Guido,
it's ridiculous.
To your point, and then we can move on. I know we got other stuff to talk about, but it's like these automatic qualifiers. It is frustrating. Like, if you're Oklahoma and everyone's telling you like you had a bad season, and then you watch approximately like 28 teams in the tournament that you would just slaughter in any given like one-off game. A lot of these teams in these other conferences, I mean, they just I know people hate hearing that, but I swear you could put all 10 of these teams in the tournament and have a great competition out of them. You know what I mean?
Well, I agree. And like, that's where like I get, and this is where I mean, you can go really deep in college basketball and you can go crazy, but this is where you start to say, well, Joe Lunardi, the pundits have, I think we're at 8 teams now of the Big 12 in there. I think Oklahoma is not in, and who's the other team
Tech.
that's out?
Yeah, Texas
Tech.
Tech. But most people seem to feel like Oklahoma State's in, and Guido, they owe Mike Boynton we like Mike Boynton. If there was anyone like that's on the bubble that should get the benefit of a doubt or kind of a nudge in, my goodness, it should be Oklahoma State for what happened to them over the last.
As long as they don't bring Caleb Boone, we're good with that.
That's true. Yeah, I could do without him. That's true. I could do without him.
But here's the thing. So you've got, if then you switch over to the other side, right? And you Johnson and I, we're nerds. We'll admit it. Nerds. And we like Ken Pomeroy's computers.
Excel spreadsheets.
His Excel spreadsheets.
Well, that's in the Excel spreadsheet, Scoot.
According to my calculations.
You sound like Shaggy. He would not be running an Excel spreadsheet.
Hey, Scoob.
According to Ken Pomeroy's Excel spreadsheets, he's got Oklahoma State at 41. He's got Texas Tech at 53 and Oklahoma at 50. Oklahoma, Texas Tech out. Maybe Oklahoma State in. I just, and West Virginia jumped up to 17th.
Listen,
is
none
that
of this
not
means
a crazy
anything.
number? 17.
None of this means anything unless Watson is saying it as well. Can we get some confirmation on what Watson is saying?
I mean, I think, Scooty, what would you say if we found out that Ken Pom uses Watson?
Yeah, what would you do?
Like, I want to buy one. I want to buy a Watson. What's a guy got to do to get his hands on a Watson?
I'm not being. You're
Is it
not.
like-
You're
it's
not.
like that
You're not
machine.
tricking me into this, Scoot.
We
It's
can't
like
go down
that.
this-
What's that thing that Rocky bought in Rocky 4? It was like the robot that Paulie had doing, getting him stuff.
Right.
I feel like that's what Watson is.
Like, that's like a 40-year-old reference, Scoot. My goodness.
Like, I think that thing was Watson before Watson.
Like that's like my buddy.
It is-
That's the equivalent of like a my buddy.
Like
or
it brought him a drink. It brought Paulie a drink.
Johnson and I are amazed on a weekly basis that Scoot even gets his computer turned on
Like, how-
and records the podcast.
How is
so.
that a quick reference in your brain? How is that thing quickly referenced on file in your brain? That doesn't make any sense.
Like,
I don't want to
but
chase
that's
the
what
Scoot. I
Watson
don't want to
is.
chase the chicken. I don't want to. Hey, yo, Rock, chase the
hey,
chicken.
Rock, I feel like I've been eating nails. I ain't never had them before. I said nails, Stallion. Nails. He thought he said snails.
Oh my God! What were we talking about? Oh, we're
I
talking about
don't know.
rankings. We're talking about
Oh, Joseph Lenardi and Kenneth Pomeroy. Yes, that's what we were talking
Not
about.
related to Jerry Pomeroy, who I do know lives in the Clarksburg area.
so. Hope he's a listener. So yeah, Ken Pom has WVU jumped up to 17 this week. I mean, he's got Big 12 teams are like all in the top 25.
Well, and Scoot, how would you feel about Joseph Lenardi also has WVU seated as a 10 facing, and this to me is laugh out loud hilarious. Guess who is the 7 in
Kentucky. I think I've seen Kentucky, right?
It's always why? It's always Kentucky.
Because it's Oscar. Because
Now the cool thing about
Oscar.
this though, is they'd be in the same bracket as Purdue, and he has that whole thing being hosted in Columbus. Now that would be an amazing atmosphere. Are you
Easy
kidding
travel.
me? For
Yeah,
all
easy
those
travel.
teams,
Listen,
that
can I-
seems
All those
so. Like, as much as I'm like,
well, except for the Catamounts, that's a long That's a long haul from Burlington, Vermont. But
well, someone has to sacrifice.
What fires me up though about this whole tournament, since they've brought in the 4 right around the corner, and then the next 4, and then
Right.
the other 4. Well, now they've got, of course, these play-in games, which they don't call them play-in games because they're what they are is a play-in game, but they call them the first round or whatever, or the
4.
round before the first round.
First four,
yeah.
something like that.
Yeah. But none of the bracket stuff actually makes any sense, right? So you could be in the West, but you're going to play your first round games in Richmond, Virginia.
Yeah, I've
and
never
then you're going to do
really-
your second round
I agree with
in
that.
Boise, Idaho.
Yeah, I've
And then we
never-
might hit like
That never makes
Back-
any sense.
no,
does
back
it?
in the day, like if you were in the East bracket, you probably played maybe a Syracuse, maybe New York City, maybe Providence, Rhode Island, maybe Boston, Massachusetts. You played in the East. It was kind of a foreign concept. Now, well, you guys are in the Southeast. We're going to have you guys play in Albuquerque, New Mexico for the first round.
Guido,
And
hot
then-
hot on the heels of the Rocky reference. It's back in my day, if you were placed in the East, you played in the East.
We knew geography back in my day.
The geography meant something.
Thanks a lot, Emmert.
Now
Thanks
I
a
got
lot.
these libtards out here telling me I got to play my East Regional in San Diego.
Well, and that's what also is kind of funny though, because like then they do that thing where like there's a Midwest regional and the South regional are
Right.
both in Des Moines. Like I
Des
don't
Moines,
know.
melting pot of all regions.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I agree. But with that said, WVU's in. So let's talk about this though.
Well, do you think though, Guido, before you leave that, so you think whatever happens in this first round of the conference
Yes.
tournament, even if you go lay an egg, you think we're safe?
we're safe.
I think I do too, but Scoot,
Yeah, I think we're okay. Obviously, if you win a game or two, it might move you up a couple of rungs of the ladder. But I don't know that we fall all that much if we lose.
No, I mean we might drop seeds a few, but I don't think there's any worry about us not going
If
To-
we get to the championship, let's just say
to
How-
what championship.
to the Big 12 championship game.
the Phillips 66
Yes,
hosted in Kansas City Big 12 championship, Guido.
That's right. Brought to you by Alamo. So, how high of a seed do you think we could get?
If you win the tournament,
Yeah, if you win the Big 12 tournament.
well, for us that would mean beating Kansas and then likely like a Texas, right? Wow. I mean,
do you think you can get would you be a 2 or a 3? Could you be a 2?
oh, I wasn't thinking.
I don't think you get that high, but I think you could be a 4 or a 5.
I was thinking at least you could flip. We're talking like 10-7. I could see WVU. Let's flip that then. Like they're a 6 or a 7, maybe to me.
So, in my mind, right? So, 7, you're a top 28 team, right?
yeah,
So, if you win that Big 12, I think you got to be considered at least a top 15, a top 12 team, right?
Right.
In the country. You won the toughest. You run
yeah.
the toughest
well,
conference.
yeah. Then you're like a 3 seed. Yeah, I don't know. You're right. That's compelling. I don't know. That's a good point.
I mean, but you got to remember, guys. So we on Wednesday face Texas Tech. We'll talk about Texas Tech here in a minute. We face Texas Tech. We're an 8 seed. They're a 9 seed. Winner of that game goes on to face Kansas.
Which is that's bad luck, right? I mean, that's
a tough draw.
I mean, they're not going to have a lot of fans. It's in Kansas City.
yeah,
It's in Missouri, for God's sake, this
right.
tournament.
It's
not in
It's
Kansas.
not like it's in Kansas, right?
Listeners, that's sarcasm, by the way, because I'm sure there's a lot of people being like, those guys are idiots. Kansas University is
come
like
on,
half an hour away
we're
from
laying
Kansas
it
City.
on pretty thick. If you've listened to the show to this point, Scoot, and you don't understand we're laying it on pretty thick, of course they know that's
I mean,
sarcasm.
I don't know that they know that.
mean,
Like, we're going to get
they
a lot of
might not know
tweets at
that.
us. There might be some like, man, those guys are morons. They don't even realize it's like half an hour away.
So let's talk Texas Tech, boys.
Some things happened.
Texas Tech.
Guido,
Some things are happening
Guido,
at Texas
you
Tech.
don't come to a podcast for breaking news often, but we had a bit of kind of breaking news today, didn't we?
I mean, it was interesting. Listen, I just gotta ask. Like, we have made fun of Mark Adams pretty much all season. Like, that's been our jam, right? But he doesn't seem like the kind of guy that has much craziness going on, Scooty.
Well,
but
does he seem
apparently-
like a professional boxer to you? Because he doesn't seem like that either. So
Scoot's still
I mean-
stuck on that. He's still stuck on the part of Mark Adams' background that was professional boxing.
does he also seem like a guy that might have lost control of his saliva or
Well,
jaws?
one thing at
or
a time
lip
here,
function?
Scoot. One thing
Yeah,
at a
there's
time.
a lot to unpack here.
There's a
Scoot.
lot to
There's
unpack.
a lot to unpack here. So Mark Adams won't be coaching Johnson for this playoff game against West Virginia this week.
Right. He was suspended today by who is it? Kirby Hocutt, I think, is their athletic director. He suspended Mark Adams Scoot for using what was reported as a racially insensitive comment. Now, he said he was we don't have to go that far into the weeds, but he said he was referencing a Bible verse that talked about workers, teachers, parents, and slaves serving their masters, end quote. And that someone complained about that, which you can see, and that got him in hot water. They then said, we're going to review things. Kirby Hocutt, in announcing this, things are going to be reviewed, suspends Mark Adams. And on the heels of that, where you were going, Jeff, Goodman then reports a separate incident that came out where he was said to have spit on a player. Now, I think the interesting part of the spitting incident is that Mark Adams, now you keep saying he's an interesting dude. This is an interesting dude answer, I think, to this. He says he explained it. No. I didn't spit on a player. I slobbered on them during the game. Now, Guido, we were texting earlier.
Slobber.
Yes,
Slobber was actually the word used.
We were
Let's just clarify.
And
we didn't come up with the word slobber. He said slobber.
Turner and hooched him.
That's one mighty basset hound.
Like, what the heck? Like,
well, we were texting earlier, and I was just thinking to myself, like, I'm trying to think of a situation where
you may have slobbered on somebody.
to make it better, like where to defend yourself and make it better, you corrected the person and said, no, I slobbered on.
I think you got to say, like,
I
think the only acceptable way to cover that is you've got to hit yourself with you got to come out with an involuntary action. Like, I sneezed and didn't cover it. Like, you can't control a sneeze.
Well, now
right?
he said he had gone to the doctor, had a bad cough, and slobbered on the player during the game. So now that's maybe does that help? Does that help you, Scoot?
No. So the word slobber did not make it any better. Like, you're not wrong, Scoot. Like, if he had said something like, I had a cold and I sneezed, and
it's still weird that you have to explain that your sneezes.
I mean,
but
but like it's just interesting.
And listen, here's I'm going to be 100% like going back to the initial reason why he was in hot water.
Yes, right.
So
the Bible verse is what he's saying. That's what he's saying.
A couple things, right? One, it's his fault for going down that path in the first place. Like, at no point do you really need to tap into Bible verses or anything that could remotely be taken as insensitive. Like, if I'm coaching African-American players, I'm not going to make slavery comments. If I'm coaching Hispanic players, I'm not going to make some sort of derogatory reference. It doesn't even have to be a direct reference, but I'm not going to make any kind of, I'm not going to, say something culturally insensitive. So apparently this guy,
what you're saying is read the room, like understand, understand your audience.
And it's not like he's a young guy. It's not like, he's just young and doesn't really get what he's doing. Like, this is a guy that's an older gentleman.
Well, and has been coaching for a long time. Like, it's not like he's getting a handle
new to the basketball
he's new to
world,
Texas Tech coaching. But
and then to add insult to injury, he lays a big he's
dropping loogies on players.
He's giving somebody hot wet one.
Now, the interesting thing on that is that Goodman's tweet. So Jeff Goodman's tweet at Goodman Hoops on Twitter, his tweet said he had a quote where someone close to the situation had quoted Adams as saying, "I can spit on you whenever I want to." And they asked him about
also
that.
Great.
And Adams said, "I don't remember saying that," end quote. So that's
not that he didn't say it. He just doesn't remember saying it.
Right. So that's a weird, I don't know.
I think
that's a weird response.
Any WVU fans going to Kansas City, the Phillips 66 Alamo Roadrunner Nat King Cole Classic.
What?
Get your kicks on Route 66. Anyway, I think they need to go with face shields. I think
Like
there
the
needs
old
to be
Andy Reid, Andy Reid on the sideline.
Yes, I think they need like
visor
a
thing.
face shield, like what your hygienist might wear. I think you just go, and maybe bibs. Maybe they wear those bibs with the alligator claw necklace part.
I think that in good news, though, Mark Adams is not going to be there, so you'll be safe. I don't think you have to worry about
Well,
it.
do you think, though, in true, like, Guido, I feel like you may have thought this too, because we're kindred spirits on the, I'm always looking for the how is this bad for WVU's upcoming stuff, thing. And I thought, are these guys like, now we're just going to go out and be free and play and like, are they fired up now heading into this?
I don't
or
know.
what? Or does it like toss them
like,
on their head and mess them up?
Because here's the thing, right? Not only a lot of these guys obviously have Coach Adams as their content, but they've also had Chris Beard probably as a recruiter for some of them.
Yeah, sure.
So like now you start to probably question like everything you've ever followed. You're like, what the heck? These guys that I've kind of been trusting with me are like problems.
And I think the other thing that bodes in our favor with this is the fact that everywhere it does not have Texas Tech in March Madness right now, playing in the NCAA tournament. So I think that you've probably got some kids that are between now not making the tournament likely, Mark Adams spitting on you and throwing racially insensitive.
This slobbering, all I envision is like somebody who had gotten a filling and they got like some bad Novocaine or something.
I
just got no control.
I think you're
it's
really
just,
out of these two things. I think you're really focusing on the slobbering a lot here.
It's so bizarre.
It's a lot of focus on the slobbering.
A lot of
Nobody
but I think
does that.
Maybe he was explaining to people that he played in Bramblage and like it got a little too.
Now I'm worried because he and Coach Huggins have like close embraces. Like it's
there was kissing involved.
I mean, I don't know what's going on.
I don't know.
Here.
It's strange.
What did it say? It don't spray it. Is that what the saying is?
Between the coaching issues and the not making the tournament, you probably got a lot of kids that already are thinking about 1 foot out the door and looking at that transfer portal and starting to fill out their paperwork. And so I think that helps WVU.
Going to Texas Tech is like going to a Gallagher concert. You're in that splash zone.
You get complimentary like rain hoodies, slickers. You're gonna.
Do you think the Storm Chasers should go to all the games? The Storm Chasers should go to all their games.
Coach is coming out for his post-game press conference. Everybody put their slickers on. Rest in peace, Gallagher.
Oh my gosh!
Rest in peace.
Like they bring those trash bags or whatever.
You've got it. You're in the splash zone.
Oh man! Well, WVU plays basketball on Wednesday. That game is against Texas Tech.
Hey, real quick. And I don't know that we were going to touch on it, but I will mention this. WVU becoming kind of a Manhattan South, where we've got a commitment from Omar Silverio.
That's right. He last played at Hofstra.
Yes, he was set to play at Manhattan.
Right.
And he kind of did the exact same thing that Jose did, except he didn't commit to a school right away. And now, with the help of Jose, looks like he and Jose are going to team up together. They're high school buddies or childhood buddies. They were looking forward to playing at Manhattan together. They're now going to play at WVU.
Well, and I thought the kicker here, Guido, was Ethan Bach on Twitter noted that he still needs a waiver to play.
That always works well for us.
Wah, wah.
Well, and here's the thing. I think because he sat out this year, I feel he's more likely to get the waiver.
Yeah, I agree. And it's this early on. It's not like he's trying to play in the tournament. Like we're talking.
I would hope so. I don't know.
Yeah, I would hope so too. So WVU, ESPNU, 7 p.m. The start of the Phillips 66 Alamo.com Colgate toothpaste Big 12 championship. I get all the sponsors in there. I don't know. Big 12 championship game. Play Texas Tech. Wear your slickers, obviously, but that game is on ESPNU, 7 o'clock Eastern time.
Face shields are necessary if you're in the first 2 rows.
When you texted that to us today, Johnson, I was like, we're going to talk about this for 20 minutes on the podcast. There's no way we don't.
Well, when you see one of those news alerts and you're like, what? Like I was like, wait, what? I had to read it a whole full second time. Like, what did I just read? What is going on here?
So anyways, some other things that are happening with WVU sports. Not a ton of stuff other than basketball stuff. I will say Darius Nichols, we talked about it last week on the show. Still, he's suspended from head coach at Radford. He is not coaching in the Big South Conference tournament, Johnson. It's not looking too good.
Yeah,
for him.
We're kind of just following this because we had been rooting for Darius. He's not going to be allowed to coach in the Big South Conference tournament. I don't think there's been any development beyond that. His brother's actually the interim coach right now. And then Guido, another sort of WVU related coaching tree move. Jared Calhoun at Youngstown State. He was named the Horizon League's Coach of the Year. That's pretty awesome.
And that's one of those names that, as we get closer to the Hugs countdown, right? It
just depends on how close they want that tree. I mean, do they want to keep it in the family, so to speak, or are they going to do
right? Or do they want to do a whole new thing? Yeah,
right.
They have a clean break. So who knows? Other things we should talk about: Big 12. Conference realignment or conference, I don't even know what you call it now, adding aggressive Big 12-ness. So the Athletic reported this past week that the Big 12 has been in contact with Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, and, wait for it,
Coach Prime.
Colorado. Yeah, Coach Prime. So it brings in, Johnson, this whole idea of having this like super conference now as the Big 12.
Yeah, well, and I had sent this to you guys earlier in the week. So you guys might follow Big Game Boomer at Big Game Boomer on Twitter. He had or they had put out remember a year ago or so where we talked about pods. Remember when pods were like the trendy, fashionable, we were all going to get in pods. Remember that, Scoot? We were going to be
like
podded
cocoon.
up. Yes.
Yep.
Well, they tweeted.
I think we should call them cocoons.
They tweeted out this set of cocoons, where our cocoon was. So, well, let's actually go. I'll put our.
Do you remember the movie Scooty Cocoon with Wilford Brimley in it?
That's exactly what he's referenced. Early Rocky. He referenced Gallagher, of course. He referenced. What was the other movie you just referenced earlier, Scoot, that was like a 80s? And now this. Like you got that on the brain tonight, big time.
Can we get a Wilford Brimley? Can we get a Wilford Brimley impersonation?
Diabetes.
I got the diabetes.
So one cocoon was Arizona State, Brigham Young, and Utah, which someone on Twitter, I should have saved it, said that sounds like the most hateful cocoon ever in our parlance.
Well, it's going to be the least watched cocoon, right? That sounds to me like,
well, for us,
you guys don't want people to pay attention. Let's put them all together,
right.
so then we can they can
That's
play each
true.
other and nobody will care.
Another proposed cocoon was Baylor, Oklahoma State, TCU, and Texas Tech. I don't know what else to say about that. Let's see, a third cocoon was Colorado, Iowa State, Kansas, and Kansas State. That's interesting, I think, because of Prime.
Pretty much the Colorado dominate cocoon.
That's what I would expect. And then our cocoon, Scoot, was Cincinnati, Houston, Central Florida, and the Mountaineers. Now, let me ask you a question. Does anything about what I just said for that cocoon, does that excite you at all in the least?
No. Well, listen, if Dana Holgerson has zero connection to WVU, is Houston always going to be linked? Like, the only link.
Yeah, and I think that's I honestly I looked at it and I think that's the only reason that Houston is in that.
Like, who cares?
Pod.
Because what happens when Dana is gone?
Well, I don't think it's that. I looked at that and I thought that's Houston realizing how the rest of the entire conference feels about them. Like, get over there with the other people. Like, get over there. We know you're in
They
Texas,
should be
but
with
get
the
over
Baylor,
there.
TCU.
Exactly.
That should be a
yes,
thing.
exactly. That would make the most sense.
And I could see them sticking, no offense to Iowa State alumni, that garbage school with us in a cocoon.
Well, they actually make the
because
most sense to me.
Sense, right.
Geographically,
distance-wise,
too.
right? Yeah,
I mean,
right. I agree.
Right.
But I don't want I want nothing to do with the state of Iowa.
Right. So, I mean, now throw Iowa. So do that then, Scoot. Throw Iowa State, the Bearcats, Central Florida, and us together. What, like,
Right.
does that?
I want no part of that. Right.
It's ridiculous.
I want no Houston.
Someone tweeted out, I think it was the WVU Barstool account even. I should have, I'll go back and find it for the show notes, but someone tweeted this out, like a quote tweet, and they just put chills.
Now, so
Like,
when
what?
you're in this cocoon, do you? Yeah, there's no chills.
Yeah, what?
Maybe
What?
pukes.
Right.
Maybe more like
Yes.
pukes.
What?
When you're in this cocoon,
Yeah.
so let's say does it just mean you play the teams in your cocoon the most?
Yeah, I think that those are your guaranteed year in
Okay.
and year out. Yeah.
Every year you play
Yes.
them. It has nothing to do with a standing though. You're not in like a division.
No,
it's not
I
that
don't think it's a division.
It wasn't shown.
I just think it's your group that you're playing in year in and year out.
Right.
You always say you got to get your poop in a group.
Yes.
That would be our group.
In a cocoon
Is the poop.
Right. Yes.
Our group is the poop.
That group is the poop. But I think the only positive I can see out of that, I mean, it doesn't move the needle for me at all from a fan excitement perspective. No, doesn't do anything. I think travel wise though,
Oh, sure.
it would at least give you 2 or 3 destinations that make a little bit of sense for you, like
I'm more likely to go to Florida than I am to go to Arizona or Houston or
Right.
godforsaken Kansas. I'm also more likely to, you can drive over to Cincinnati.
Right.
That's the only one. I mean, if you're going to link WVU with any of them, it should just be Cincinnati. If there's, then it doesn't really
But
matter who else.
don't you think, just generally speaking, this whole discussion about adding these 4 corner schools, I think if you're Baylor, Oklahoma State, Iowa State, Kansas teams, that probably is pretty cool. Like, honestly, from their point of view, I'm sure that's pretty cool. If you're us, if you're Central Florida, Cincinnati, like, to me, that's just like, this is worst case. I don't want to go farther. I don't want to go into yet another time zone. You know what I mean? That's my reaction
Right.
to it. What is I know it's going to make it attractive from a TV contract,
So
but come on.
let me ask this. Do you guys think that, so obviously there's probably going to be some more shifting, right? There's a lot of talk that Florida State, we talked about this last week, Florida State is interested in making more money or getting their lion's share of the
noise.
ACC money or whatever.
Yeah.
So let's say they say either you guys are going to give us a bigger cut or we're going to see who else might want us,
Right.
and I'm sure the SEC wants them. Do you think something like this locks us more into the Big 12, or do you think if the ACC were to come calling, we would say, listen, we're going to check out things over here on the ACC side?
I think Scoot, and Johnson mentioned it last week on the show, and the more I dove into it this week, I agree with him. I think WVU is going to go where the money is, and the money right now
Is the Big
is
12,
not in
right.
the ACC.
Right.
It's in the Big
I
12.
would just, Guido, I would expect Ren Baker to say, look, it's my obligation to put us in the best possible contract and situation.
Then
and
I think, so in that situation then, and unfortunately, I don't think we have the right guy for this, but our AD should be trying to help find other schools in the East to bring in. If we're going to bring in other schools.
Yeah,
Big
you
12,
would
right.
want the Big 12 to poach
Like,
eastward.
and I don't
Let's
want
steal
like
a Virginia Tech. Let's steal.
I don't want like a
let's-
Southern Miss,
Right.
because I
No,
could see
no,
them
no,
doing
no.
something
No,
like that.
right.
I could see them bringing a
Right.
Southern
You gotta-
Miss. I'm
go
Tulane.
poach.
I could see them bringing a Tulane.
Right.
Um,
I agree with you. And and here's the thing, Johnson, and this is us coming off of a horrific and in a terrible football situation, and the basketball team's not terrible, but doing better. But like, I look at this conference now, even this setup of the conference with Arizona State, the Utes in there, and I go,
You're talking about like
two
Goodfellas
Utes.
Utes?
We got one Ute and two Utes. The Utes all Utes. But I look at this conference and I'm like, I think we're a top tier team in this conference. Like, I think
Well,
in football, Colorado, I do. I think we're top tier teams.
Listen.
Baylor's going to be a top tier team.
basketball
Oklahoma
or
State's
football?
both.
Okay.
No.
That's
Both.
what I started
No.
to ask. Do you mean both sports?
No.
I mean both sports.
No.
Yes.
Not until things change,
Yeah,
we
I don't.
Well, I agree. There's got to be change, but I think looking at this and looking at size of school, ability to recruit,
If you
you know,
go
history, all of that stuff.
Rich Rod, Dana, maybe. Neil Brown has done Jack Honky.
I understand that, but I just look at this and I go, well, we're a top tier. We're up there with the Baylors and the Oklahoma States and the Texas Techs and the Iowa States, and I don't
Well,
know. I just look
maybe
at it
I
and
would
go,
look at it.
Basketball.
who's top
yes.
tier in that?
No,
Who's top tier?
I
in
don't. I don't think I disagree with you, but I don't like. If anything, Guido, and I think I texted this to you guys the other day. I think, like, let's say Prime's not a home run in Colorado. Let's say Gundy gets run out of Oklahoma State because they've been rough lately. I can almost see in like a bad case scenario this conference being treated like the old Big East. Like, why do they still get a seat up here at the playoff table and stuff if you're not careful? You know what I mean?
Sonny Dykes is going to have to be not a flash in the pan.
Right. And like Cincinnati now post Luke Fickell can't go back to old Cincinnati.
Well, they brought in a hot hire, didn't they?
With Scott Satterweight or something.
Let's go find some guy that stunk and bring him in and see how that goes.
But do you see what
Let's
I'm
get a retread.
like?
And
I
see
don't.
what that
I don't
looks
think
like.
I don't think I sound crazy by saying that. I think you, just like us with Neil Brown. Like, you can only be 5 and 7 so many years, and then people are like, I don't go there. I don't like when they recruit me now. I don't care because I don't want to go be a part of them.
Well, and I'm sure we'll talk about this in the off season some more. But to me, and like looking at what the landscape of college football, as they say, and looking at how the SEC is gaining power, and now the Big Ten has decided they want to get in on the game and they're going to gain power, I almost feel like the Big 12.
They're going to take these, but they're going to take these teams.
Yeah, they're going to take these teams, or the Big 12 and the ACC at some point need to go, hey, you know what, guys? Let's combine. Let's become the super conference, and we'll combine and we'll do it regionally. And instead of you chasing people and us chasing people, maybe we stay the same. I mean, maybe, and I don't know how that looks.
Let's own all 4 time zones.
But yes, let's own all 4 time zones. Somebody has to do it.
Like, for me, if I'm being selfish, I guess if you're going to go into the West Coast time zone, I don't want the 2 Arizonas. I'll take Washington and Oregon.
Yeah, I don't know, Scoot. It's a fine.
I don't know.
It's a fair comment. I don't know. I think everyone's assuming you can't.
For both sports, I think those are more attractive.
Well, I think everyone's assuming your scope is that you can't nudge those guys out of there.
Right.
You know, I think that's the.
Well, they're going to get left high.
Well, the other thing I read though that I thought was really interesting about this is Brett Yormark has stated that he would like to explore decoupling the basketball and selling that as its own TV package, which I thought was really interesting because he was quoted as saying that he feels basketball has more value than what we're giving it. And I only bring that up because if you go back to 2012, I don't know if you guys remember, but when they were interviewing Huggs, Boeheim, people around the Big East when it was falling apart and splitting and stuff, Huggs specifically, I remember, said we don't have enough juice. The basketball side doesn't have enough juice for some reason. You know, we're not in the conversation when this is happening. It's all football focused. So I thought it was interesting this week in a lot of these articles to see Yormark's quote saying, no, we're actually going to explore treating the basketball as its own, you know, because it's gotten such a good a favorable view of the Big 12 conference this year in basketball. We're actually going to explore giving that its own, you know, value for a TV contract.
Yeah, I mean, I think and I think this is going to be a conversation that we are going to spend most of our offseason talking about, because I think this might not be the year for big moves. There might not be big moves this offseason between basketball and football, but this is setting up for 2024 for there to be big moves. And so that's what it's starting to look like. Guys, we got to wrap it up, but a couple things. We and I feel bad because one of these shows we need to put baseball first, right? We need to stop dumping baseball at the
especially
end
because
of the
of
podcast.
us. Like, it's silly.
Yes, because we're baseball
outside
guys.
of the show, we talk about baseball all the time, but then we try to fit it in here. Yeah, you're right.
WVU travels to Richmond this weekend. Interestingly enough, I've actually been to the Diamond in Richmond, watched many games. The old Richmond Braves used to play there when I lived in Richmond. But WVU plays a very odd
Is that
double.
in Western Virginia?
No, it's not in Western Virginia. It is in Virginia, the state of, the Commonwealth of. WVU plays a strange doubleheader on Saturday where they played VCU in the first game, and then they turned around and played Kinesis in the second game and won both games on ESPN+. I actually watched I missed part of the first half of the basketball game because Johnson was texting me about how bad it was, and watched the baseball game against VCU, and it was fun. WVU was down and had a nice comeback win there in the late innings. WVU baseball, though, continuing to improve. They've now jumped to being 6-4 overall in their non-conference games, with some wins this weekend, and they play this week. They also play on Wednesday. The basketball team plays at 7 p.m. The baseball team plays at 3 p.m. Baseball's on ESPN+. You can watch a game. It's in Morgantown at Wagner Field at Monongalia County Park. The name is getting longer, but we'll say it. And then they play this weekend against Minnesota in Morgantown. All three games again on ESPN+. So you can watch a lot of WVU baseball. It's fun to watch, John.
Yeah, and scrimmaging the Diamondbacks. They were hosted in Arizona this past week. That had to be an amazing experience for those guys, I would think, to play that on that field, scrimmage those guys. That had to be a really cool experience. I think it's awesome that they got to do that.
They did lose 6-0, but I mean, you're playing professional baseball players.
Yeah.
I mean, the team that they played is essentially AAA guys. A lot of AAA minor league guys have played on that game against them. So WVU baseball, though, continuing to improve. Randy Mazey does a great job with the program. Glad to see WVU improving. Unfortunately, the thing that bummed me out the most about that Diamondbacks, the game against the Diamondbacks, I don't think there was a full box score released on it because it was an exhibition game. So there was never a full box score on it. But yeah, definitely check out WVU baseball if you get a chance. WVU basketball starts the Phillips 66 Big 12 Championship Tournament this week. They play Wednesday night against Texas Tech. That game is on ESPNU. Tip-off at 7 o'clock, so check that out. Make sure you don't miss it. Also, make sure you check us out. We're online. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at Got Your Ears. You can also find us on Facebook. Just search Got Your Ears On. And check out our website. It's where everything about us lives.
That's where you can find it. GotYourEarsOn.com. You can click on the latest show. We'll put it up there with all the show notes of stuff we talked about and probably didn't get to, stuff on there as well. You can click on the link to the latest show through the TuneIn link and listen right on the website. You can also click through to the merch store and check out our GYEO merch, Guido.
Yeah, so check it out. GotYourEarsOn.com. We'll be back next week with another show. We'll break down the Phillips 66 Big 12 Men's Championship Tournament in Kansas City. We'll tell you how WVU did. We'll tell you about how they looked. And we'll be talking about, that's Selection Sunday, we'll be talking about where everybody lands in the NCAA March Madness tournament.
Exciting.
It's exciting. So make sure you check that out and listen to us. We'll be back to do our pre-tournament show we're excited about. So that'll be awesome. And thanks for listening, everybody. We'll be back next week. You've been listening to Got Your Ears On.